The Eagles suffer their first loss of the season, and suddenly there are questions on defense. We'll talk it over with ESPN's Tim McManus. Time for a little get off my lawn. Tony Cutillo will join us for some fantasy starts and sits. Sean Green has your Week 11 props, and Gary Myers on protecting the quarterback at all costs. It's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for Week 11 of This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Great to be back here live Thursday night before the Thursday night game between Tennessee and Green Bay this week. It's a good game. The Packers have gotten off the mat, or at least they got off for 1 week by coming back and beating the Dallas Cowboys by scoring 17 points unanswered in the fourth quarter. It's always good for the NFC and the NFL when the Green Bay Packers are in the mix. So I guess that's a good thing. Bad loss for Dallas. But okay, we got a million things to talk about on tonight's show. I only have 1 hour to do it. Thank you all for checking in here. Please give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports as we rumble along through Week 11 in the National Football League. All right, Xander, how about a little Vince Lombardi? What the hell's going on here? We're going to be talking this week so much for undefeated. All right, Philadelphia loses Monday night. We're going to talk about this game a lot. Very excited to have Tim McManus joining us in about 12 or so minutes from ESPN, longtime buddy of mine. Did my radio show with me for, at least 10 years. Tim's a great guy and a well-versed Eagle expert for ESPN. Of course, there's some cracks in the run defense now, 2 weeks in a row. We're going to talk with Tim extensively about this after Dameon Pierce goes for 139 on the Thursday night game. Lo and behold, the Washington Commanders ran 51 plays in the first half, almost all of them runs, in really starving the Eagles' offense of any oxygen. Jalen Hurts still almost pulled the game out, and I think he would have had he gotten that ball back at the end of the game. All right, the Eagles responding even more so than their fans did, signing Ndamukong Suh and Linville Joseph, two veterans, to plug the interior of that defensive line while Jordan Davis is on the IR, the first-round pick out of Georgia. Very interesting. The Eagles moving very quickly to do that, and we'll talk to Tim about why they move so quickly and how that entire roster now and rotation is going to sort itself out. But you got to give Philadelphia some credit. They recognize there's a problem. They're not going to let it linger. The Eagles trying to plug the middle of that defensive line because they need to get off the field in order for their offense to do what it's been doing. Off the mat in Green Bay and Tampa Bay, I mentioned how the Packers came back and defeated the Cowboys. Tampa Bay has now won 2 in a row. So I was part of the group that had already put together the eulogy for Tom Brady and the Bucs and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. But wait a minute. Green Bay is now still in the area. They're still in the area. They got a lot of winning to do. They're not going to catch Minnesota unless the Vikings completely collapse. But Green Bay certainly could end up in the wild card mix, and that's number 12 is probably not a guy you want to see come January. Tampa Bay is the most average team in the league statistically. Only 3 points scored more than given up. They're 5-5. They're 2-2 at home, and they're 3-3 on the road. They do, or vice versa. I'm sorry, but Tampa Bay doing everything average, but they are atop the NFC South. If you want to be losing to any team in the NFL this year, make sure it's the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, in 4 of their 7 losses, would you believe that team's 2-7 after trading for Devontae Adams? A team with Adams, Josh Jacobs, and a pretty good defensive line. They just don't know how to win. 4 of their 7 losses, they've had the lead. And in 3 of those losses, they've had a 17-point lead to the likes of Jacksonville and lost the game. And excruciating how the Raiders are losing games. A lot of talk in that locker room right now going on in Vegas. Now let me circle back here. Thanks very much, Xander. You can pull that now. Let me get off on a little bit of a rant here. I've got a few minutes. As you'll notice, the logo says "Get off my lawn." So here we go. I'm going to act like Clint Eastwood now in some of his older movies. But two things, all right? First is Bill Cowher. Now, Pat McAfee, who's a more famous Pat than I am, certainly preempted me a little bit on this. But Bill Cowher on CBS's NFL Today goes off on a little bit of a rant, a very pompous and sober discussion about Jeff Saturday being named coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Saturday has no coaching experience whatsoever, but Jim Irsay saw fit. Irsay's the owner, names Saturday the coach. Saturday did play 13 years in Indianapolis. He's a Super Bowl champion from there. And he got the job. Does he deserve it? Well, that's to be seen now, isn't it? He's 1-0. He defeated the Raiders Sunday. But I just don't like the fact that Bill Cowher did that. I mean, who was Bill Cowher to decide who should get an NFL head coaching job? Cowher made comments about the almost like the coaching is a sacred profession, and it's an insult to the profession that Saturday didn't, quote, pay his dues. Well, let me just point this out to you, Bill. On January 5th of 2007, Bill, you resigned as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And on February 15th of 2007, 40 days later, you were named as a studio analyst for CBS Sports. Now, unless you crammed in those 40 days to become an expert studio analyst, then that means you got that job with no experience whatsoever, leapfrogging probably hundreds of people with broadcasting degrees or sports broadcasting degrees who are hoping to get into that business. But no, Bill Cowher got the job. And the job you got, Bill, had nothing to do with your experience as a studio analyst. Apparently, you forgot that when you tried to cut Jeff Saturday at the knees. So leave him alone. We don't want to hear from you, Bill. He got the job. God bless him. So all you 32 NFL owners, you other 31 owners, now you know that if you are looking to hire a head coach, make sure you vet it with Bill Cowher first. All right. Okay, my second rant is about officiating. Now, of course, there are about 2 million Philadelphia Eagle fans who would join me in this rant and could probably do it instead of me. But here, obviously, there were three really bad calls made in that game Monday night. We're going to talk to Tim about a couple of them. But the one, of course, it's a bang-bang play, I know, and I couldn't identify the Eagle on the sideline, but the Eagles got an unsportsmanlike conduct or an unnecessary roughness penalty when a Washington player was clearly in bounds. He was still in bounds when the Eagle hit him, but the flag throws 15 yards. It extended a Washington drive, and we all know how those drives were in that first half on Monday night. It was a bad call. And then, of course, in the fourth quarter, two egregiously bad officiating calls and non-calls. The first one being the lack of a face mask call when Dallas Goedert almost had his head ripped off, and it contributed to an injured shoulder in which he's now out for 4 weeks. Just a disastrous play all around for Philadelphia. And you can see from the end zone angle, the back judge is staring right at it as Goddard's head turns around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. No call. Then, to add insult to injury, the play is reviewed to determine if after Goddard's fumble, the commander player had been touched by Goddard prior to standing up and running for a defensive score. But because of the way the NFL's rules are, they could not acknowledge or change any kind of ruling based upon what was an obvious face mask. That's got to stop. We got to stop that stuff. And the third one, of course, being the call for roughing when Brandon Graham just crushed the Washington quarterback Taylor Heineke. Heineke said after the game when he took the knee, he saw Graham coming, and what he did was he was actually saying to him, "Come on, hit me." So of course, once Graham did hit him, Heineke fell back like someone had just hit him with a brick. And lo and behold, the flag throws. And my point here is you cannot throw that flag with a minute to go. You have to have some intuition as an official to say, wait a minute, I am deciding this game. As I reach into my back pocket, I am deciding this game, which is exactly what he did. Now, I'm a believer that pass interference in the first quarter is pass interference in the fourth quarter. I believe that. Those objective calls, mostly objective. Pass interference may not be all the time. But, yeah, I'd call it the same way in the fourth as in the first. But you've got to have some sense. That wasn't a penalty in the first. And I just think the officials got to, protect the quarterback. We're going to talk to Gary Myers about it later on this hour. But we have to cut this out. Heineke has on a pair of shoulder pads. He's got a helmet on. He's got knee pads. He's got everything. Now let's cut this out with that kind of ticky-tack call in a one-score game with a minute to go. That was a bad call, and it should not have been made. Now my solution here is simple. Let's give the two coaches 3 challenges, not 2. Give them 3 and let them challenge anything. That's it. We got to stop this. These kind of penalties. The Eagles really, despite how they played overall with the turnovers, they could have won that game without those bad calls. They would have won the game, I think, without those calls. So I'd say give each coach 3 challenges, and it could be anything. He could challenge a called penalty, an uncalled penalty, an out-of-bounds play, whatever he wants to challenge. But the other thing that has to be done is you don't need 8 minutes to review the play. You can still move the game along even with 6 challenges in a game. Just limit to 1 minute at the most. You're staring into a television screen. If you can't overturn a call based on staring at something for 1 minute, the call stands. I mean, it's not rocket science here, even though Bill Cowher might have you believe that. It is not rocket science. That can be solved. Let's move on. Okay, there's my 2 rants, all right? When we get back, I want to welcome in for the first time this season my good buddy Tim McManus from ESPN. We're going to dissect much of what happened Monday night, in particular that fourth quarter. We'll talk to Tim about the Eagles' 2 defensive line signings and what he thinks that means and how that rotation is going to work. And we'll look forward to Sunday's game when Philadelphia visits Indianapolis. That's all coming up next on This Week in Pro Football.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
Cantor, Novak, Beaver & Pike is a full-service CPA firm with offices in PA and New Jersey, offering first-rate accounting, audit, and tax services. They focus on helping clients achieve their business and financial goals, from startup operation to long-term financial planning. For more information, call Terry Cantor or Dan Pike at 215-550-2954 or on the web at cnbpcpas.com.
Are you looking for a family-friendly fitness center in the heart of Bucks County? Spring Mill Athletic Club has programs and activities to offer the whole family for every age and season. Group classes, personal training, dance academy, summer camp, and more can be found at this non-intimidating environment. Come tour Spring Mill Athletic Club today and get a free 1-week trial membership. Visit us at springmillathletic.com for more information.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back this week in pro football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you week 11 in the National Football League. Let me get this guy on here because his time is too valuable to waste. And that is the Eagles beat reporter for ESPN. Tim's been doing this for a while. Before that, he was a valuable partner of mine as we built this program up. Tim, how you doing, pal?
PAT, good to be with you, man. What's going on?
Great to have you here, Tim. Adds immediate star power to the broadcast. So, of course, how wrong can we go? So it's really good to have you back here. So, Tim, let me do this chronologically, okay? Because I want to talk to you about the Eagles, the two defensive line signings, and look ahead to the Colts game. But let's look back to Monday night and give me your thoughts first off. The officiating was really, I think, the Eagles got really crushed by by at least two big plays in the fourth quarter and a couple even before that.
Yeah, well, I would say that the big one and the most obvious is the missed face mask on Dallas Goedert. And that's not just because it stopped their drive. It looked like they were building some momentum, probably would have taken the lead on that series, but also knocks Dallas Goedert out and causes a fumble at the same time. So it essentially, played a big part and cost them the game. And now it costs them one of their top players. He's on IR now, so he's gone for at least 4 games, and that's a big deal. Like, one of the reasons why Jalen Hurts is playing as well as he is because he's got a lot of good weapons around him, and Goddard, no exception to that. The other two, you can pick apart. I'm not as hot about either of them if I'm an Eagles fan. One, because I think by letter, the late hit that Brandon Graham had on Heineke, I mean, letter of the law, it probably was legit. He shouldn't have come in the way that he did after Heineke gave himself up. And the other one with Gardner Johnson on the sideline, they said the reason they threw the flag was because he lowered his helmet. So, but that Goddard one, man, it's hard to excuse that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I was saying, Tim, in the opening segment of the show, I think the NFL, when those things happen, they happen in a primetime game. The NFL usually will react. And I think they got to look now at replay, and it's going to be interesting to see, Tim, what they do. But the sheer Alice in Wonderland process of having a guy go under the hood and look at that play in terms of a replay, but not make any comment or acknowledgement that they missed an egregious face mask, that's got to be fixed, right?
Yeah, and we were having this conversation amongst some of the media guys today down at the NovaCare complex of, what's the harm of having a referee kind of like an eye in the sky in the booth, where if it's like something that they miss blatantly, that's affecting the game that way. Like, they got technology these days, Pat. They can, they can just dial right into a guy's ear and be like, listen, you missed one, throw a flag. And so you're right. Like when big things happen, like especially if something like this happens in the playoffs, everybody's eyes on it. It's magnified. It affects the outcome of the game, affects, a player's health. Like, usually there's a reaction to that.
Yeah. All right, Tim, the other thing I want to mention about the game Monday night was just get your overall assessment here. The fact that Washington was able to run 51 plays, 40 minutes to 20 minutes time of possession, 25 first downs for Washington. The fact they only averaged 3.1 yards per rush, but were able to grind so many first downs because the Eagles couldn't get off the field. Do you think the Eagles maybe overlooked Washington a little bit Monday night?
I don't know if overlook is the right word, but maybe kind of like, and, I learned this from you, Pat, how big of a psychology sport football is. Right. And when you're riding high, it even Hurts said it afterwards, like, the whole hungry dogs run faster thing. And to the point of like, it's just hard to maintain that hunger when you keep winning. And so the edge dulls ever so slightly week by week, until you get to the point where you're going up against Washington, you're feeling really good about yourselves, and then you start slipping and on assignments. I'm not sure if you saw this, but Jonathan Gannon's defense had 10 players on the field on two separate occasions against Washington. Like, what's that all about?
I know. And then to exacerbate matters, Tim, in the first 2 minutes, the Eagles went up 7-0. on a good defensive play, their last good defensive play of the game, they go up 7-0. So that just reinforces what you just said. The Eagles are probably thinking, oh man, it's just going to be another walk tonight. And everything's going our way. And lo and behold, they end up losing the game. So now, Tim, we go to the steps the Eagles took this week. And it's almost funny if you think about it that Eagle fans began clamoring right away. What's going on with this rush defense? Well, lo and behold, the Eagles brass, Howie doesn't wait too long. He signs Linval Joseph, the 35-year-old longtime defensive tackle, NFL defensive tackle, most recently with the Chargers. And today, Ndamukong Suh is signed, who's been around the league with a number of teams, the Rams, most recently the Buccaneers, started with the Lions. Give me your thoughts on these two signings and whether and how you think this rotation is going to work.
Yeah, so the one famous saying in reporting is watch what they do and not what they say. So even if they were trying to paint the idea that we're okay with this run defense, we're going to get it buttoned up, Howie comes over the top and brings in these two veteran defensive tackles, which is, I don't know if it's a sign of panic, but certainly a sign that they recognized that there was a problem and that they didn't feel super comfortable being able to fix it in-house. Like, who would have thought that Jordan Davis would have had such an impact as a rookie?
I know.
When he was in there versus out. The numbers are pretty staggering. When he was on the field, they were allowing like 3.8 yards per rush. When he was off the field, it went to 6. And when he went down with that high ankle sprain against Pittsburgh, you saw Houston and Washington were essentially able to have their way on the ground. And so I like the moves from the standpoint of, okay, you get guys that can help fill in behind Hargrave and Cox. I mean, you get experienced guys where there's not that big drop off. Right. The only thing that I worry about is what does it do to chemistry? Like, chemistry is a real thing. Yeah. Few teams have the type of chemistry that they had in 2017. And I really felt like it was kind of replicated, at least in the early going of this 2022 season. Now you bring in, a couple, at least one more alpha with Suh. And how does that all work? And how the vibes kind of bounce off of one another? What does it do to guys' egos? That kind of thing. Like, that's the big unknown for me.
All right. And on the same defensive line, Tim, give me your thoughts on the outside guys, Hassan Reddick. Robert Quinn obtained, everyone thought that was a steal by Philadelphia, a 4th-round pick for a proven edge rusher, but he hasn't played that much even for Philadelphia since the Eagles obtained him. He only has a minimum number of plays. Reddick appears to have cooled off. How concerned are the Eagles about what seems to be a lack of production out of their edge rushers?
Yeah, and then Quinn just popped up as did not practice today. So that, kind of puts in question his status for this game on Sunday. Reddick kind of started slow, red hot for a few games, has tailed off slightly. I guess maybe the biggest part, Pat, is you look, and I think they got like 5 guys that are 30 plus now on that defensive front. Yeah. And they're proven guys. Fletcher Cox has done a lot in this game. Brandon Graham, but how much is age collectively catching up to this group? They're going to need it any way they can get it. I still think that Reddick is going to be productive for them in the long term. He's having a decent season overall, maybe a little bit more consistency out of them. Josh Sweat, I think, needs to get into the action a little bit more. So, it's not as strong as like the 17 group, as for instance, but they need some of their key guys to step up in this second half here.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, now the Eagles, talking with Tim McManus from ESPN. Tim, the Eagles now go to Indianapolis to play the Colts and Bill Cowher's best friend, Jeff Saturday. The Colts coming off I guess, Tim, you'd call it a surprising win. I mentioned earlier how the Las Vegas Raiders, they're willing to lose to anybody. So Indy was just next in line. But now Philadelphia comes in, perhaps, Tim, a little chastened. And do you see that as in going into this game, is that going to benefit Philadelphia in that now they know they can't just roll it out there?
Yeah. I mean, if they got their bad loss out of their system, and I think that, and speaking with Jason Kelce today, he said that, the refocus was kind of there, that it gets amplified coming off of a loss. You criticize yourself a little bit more during those team meetings. And I think that they'll have an edge to them in this game. And I think for Indianapolis, I think your boy Matty Ice is going to have to beat them, because this isn't a group that's going to want to get beaten on the ground for a third straight week. So as good as Jonathan Taylor is, I think that all of their eyes are going to be on that backfield.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right.
And let Matty Ice beat him. I don't know if he can do it. So I think that, the Eagles will probably go in with kind of a hungry mentality than we've seen.
How do you see Goddard's targets getting distributed? It's funny how the Eagles, Tim, they spent about 3 years. They were spoiled at tight end with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Now all of a sudden they have neither one. Who's going to fill in there, and where do you see the bulk of those targets going?
Yeah, so I actually want to bounce this off of you because I have this written for tomorrow, and I feel pretty strong about it, but I know there's probably arguments in the other way. So my contention is that there's no bigger drop off from number 1 to number 2 on the Eagles roster than at tight end. You agree with that or disagree?
I think, Tim, you're right. I would say yes to that. I think they have some speed, they have some talent at wide receiver. They've got a passel of running backs. Even though, thank God, Sanders has finally distinguished himself this year. But I would agree with you, Tim. They're pretty solid on the offensive line. This is the one spot where they appear to have not thought about an extended Dallas Goedert injury. So how big a drag is this going to be on how Jalen Hurts was maneuvering that offense?
Yeah, I think it's significant. I mean, because just sort of like Jordan Davis, nobody could quite do what he did. You know, the same thing is for Goddard. Like, nobody can block and pass catch at that level, which means that it has to be kind of piecemeal. You're going to get some blocking from Jack Stoll. The rookie Grant Calcaterra is going to come in and try to do something in the pass game. They have Tyree Jackson that's coming off the PUP. But, it's just not going to be the same comfort level. It's not going to be the same production. And so what you'll probably see is a lot of Stoll as the single tight end, doing a lot of blocking, and then you're going to have to rely on, bringing in a third wide receiver to, get into that mix and make up for some of that pass catching production. So, a little bit more Quez Watkins and Zach Pascal is probably the key. But I mean, make no mistake, this is bad news for the play callers. This is bad news for Jalen Hurts. Like, this is one that they're going to feel. Can they overcome it? I mean, maybe. But, it's not something that's going to be an easy thing for them to do.
It's funny, Tim, isn't it? How the NFL season, it's just too long, the NFL season, not to take these kind of sudden turns. You know what I mean? Philadelphia sailing along, and then all of a sudden, boom, now you've got some adversity has happened. It'll be very interesting to see how the team responds. I think they will, but it'll be interesting to see now that this first set of adversity has hit them, what they do. I guess you're going out to Indy this weekend?
Yeah, I'll be out there. And it's supposed to be, I think, like 20 degrees and winds whipping. They'll be playing indoors, but
I know Tim McManus. That's where he'll be. Indoors. That's right, man. You see, the NFL moved that Buffalo game to Detroit, which I think was the right thing to do. 3 to 6 feet of snow. That's not a dusting, right?
No, I think that was probably the right move for them. I'd rather be in Indy than Buffalo. I'll say that.
That's true. That is true. Well, listen, I certainly appreciate you being here, Tim. The time flew by as I knew it would. And thanks for all the information. And keep up the great work you do for ESPN. Everybody check Tim out. ESPN.com. His stories are always excellent, always. So please check that out. And Tim, thanks very much. I look forward to talking to you again. All right. Have a good Thanksgiving too.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, Pat, and continued success on this program. It's awesome. Good job.
All right. Thanks very much, Tim. That was the great Tim McManus joining me here on This Week in Pro Football. Tim did this show with me for at least 10 years, and he was great each and every week. And he went from there to a successful career with ESPN, and good for him. All right, listen, when we get back, my arch nemesis is going to join me. We're going to talk some fantasy football with the jigsaw himself, Tony Cutillo. That's next on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at whistlerpearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. whistlerpearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan here, halfway through a fast-moving hour of football talk, getting ready for Week 11 in the National Football League. Timmy Mack was brought to you by the great folks at First Bank in New Jersey. This evil SOB is brought to you by the great folks at Concrete Cutting Systems, and that would be Tony Cutillo from Win Daily, from Sirius XM, the Jigsaw Man. Tony, how you doing?
I'm great, Pat. You're looking better each week. I just got to tell you.
Really
dapper fellow, man. Even though you just call me your arch nemesis, it's okay.
I do have that Sean Connery look. There's no question about it. And not everybody's got it, but there you go.
You got to flaunt it. You got to flaunt it, right?
That's right. But thanks for joining me here, Tony. I want to hit you with a few things. First off, some backfields are getting crowded, and I wanted to get your opinion. First off, that a Sunday night game, Elijah Mitchell, 22 carries for 90 yards or 87 yards. And all you saw were pictures of CMC standing on the sideline. What are your thoughts about the 49er backfield?
It's so funny. Now, people always say the line tells you something. And that rushing line for Christian McCaffrey continued to drop all week long. And I was sitting there saying to myself, you're not telling me Kyle Shanahan's going to start running Elijah Mitchell, and what does he do? Right. And you know what, Pat, here's the thing. You can't help but see the burst that Mitchell had.
I know.
So I'll tell you what, people, calm down, because you're looking like a 50-50 split. He did this before, right? It's not new for Kyle Shanahan.
I know that. But a guy like CMC, I think, could get San Francisco deep in the playoffs. I mean, get the ball in this guy's hands. He might get hurt. That's true. But you don't know. See, Tony, my thought would be that they'll come right back this week and McCaffrey will get 75% of the touches. But it's hard to bank on it. You know what I mean? So I don't know how you did it. Did you move McCaffrey down based upon what you saw last week with Mitchell?
Yeah, I moved them down. I mean, not a huge amount though, right? I mean, you said 75%. I'm looking more like 60-40. I still think it's C-Max backfield, but 60-40 to me. I mean, this is past history, no matter who you are. And they want to make sure this guy is healthy, like you said. So I really see them limiting his touches down the stretch here.
All right. Kenyon Drake was having a nice run with his team of the week this day, the Baltimore Ravens. He's not a bad running back, tell you the truth, Tony. No. And he had a nice couple of weeks there for the Ravens. But now the Gus Bus is back. Gus Edwards, give me your thoughts on managers who have either of these guys and what to do with them Sunday.
I'm not sold on Gus Bus. Listen, I know he came back and he looked really good, but I saw a burst just like we just talked about with Mitchell and Kenyon Drake. He's reborn, and that's what they do out there in Baltimore. They reborn running backs, right? Yeah. And I made a statement on Sirius that everybody sounds crazy last weekend, and I said that Kenyon Drake, no matter what, it's going to be a top 7 fantasy running back for the rest of the year. Wow. And I'm not coming off of that. I think he's that good. Yeah. He's found a home. And they're going to limit Gus a little bit. That knee's a problem. It's still a problem, and it's going to be lingering all year.
Yeah, I think Drake looks real good too. You're right, and I think it's a little bit annoying to Lamar Jackson owners because inside the 10, Jackson was as big a threat as anybody to score the rushing touchdown there. Doesn't look like it now, and I don't blame the Ravens. I mean, he's not meant to take that pounding. And the Eagles did the same thing. They've taken the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands in terms of those rushing scores.
Have to protect your quarterback, right?
That's the truth.
It's your franchise.
It's obvious. Certainly, the officials do it Monday night. And I tell you, I just had Tim McManus on. Tim thought by the letter of the law, that was a good call. I do not think that was a good call at all. What do you think?
I'm back and forth. I slightly agree with Tim, but I also agree that if you look at the replay, he held off, right? The rule says that, forced pressure, and he held off. I mean, he's a big guy. BG's a big guy to stop that momentum.
The quarterback's got a helmet on. He's got shoulder pads. He's got knee pads. Come on, knock it off. Knock it off with that.
It's all going to get worse. Give them flags. Just give them flags.
Yeah, let's not decide games anyway. A couple more names, Tony, I want to hit you with here before you give me your jigsaw pieces, and that is, could this finally be a week where Russell Wilson actually produces as a fantasy quarterback home against the Raiders?
I looked at him a lot. His number's really low. If you're playing DFS, it's 5,800. If you have him on season long, it looks like the week. But I'll tell you the thing that concerns you, though, Pat. Even though he looks like he's doing okay, I'll give you 6.8, 6.7, 7.0. That's yards per pass over his last 3 weeks. Yeah. That's putrid.
That is.
That's not good.
No.
Right? So if he's only throwing a ball 17 to 21 times, the odds are he's barely going to get 200 yards. So you got to be very careful. Unless he's throwing 3 touchdowns, he might not be a great play.
There is something intrinsically wrong with that offense in Denver. It's really, if you thought about it, Tim, Tony, back in late August, for God's sake, Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, you got
Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, Courtland Sutton. You got a good tight end out there. You got they lost Javonte Williams. But man, that looked like a heck of an offense, and it is it's probably the worst statistical offense in the league. So it'll be interesting to see. The Raiders play everybody tough, even though they always find a way to lose. But there's got to be a game, I think, Tony, where Wilson all of a sudden breaks out, and I'm thinking it could be this one. But you're right; it takes some guts to put him in there.
It does. It takes a lot of guts. And, it really does. Hey, listen, Nathaniel Hackett was getting talked about being coach of the year in August. What happened to that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he was the best coach in August. I think there's no doubt about that.
Me and you could have been good coaches in August, too.
Yep. One other name.
Your boy.
Is this name emerging from the crypt? A terrible injury to Cooper Kupp, and Tony, it speaks to the incredible value of the backup quarterback. I think the Eagles have a good one. Obviously, Dallas has a good one. Washington has a serviceable one. You could see that. The Rams, John Wolford stinks. You got Cooper Kupp hung out to dry, and now I think you might not see Kupp again this season. Is Allen Robinson going to emerge perhaps as a reliable wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season?
This all depends on the quarterback, honestly. Like you said, Wolford's a stiff. It's simple as that. I mean, you might as well put Jace Daniel out there, right? It doesn't even matter. There's another all-time stiff
all-time richest stiff. Yeah.
He needs a Brinks truck at his house because I swear to God. But listen, A-Rob, you just think, yes, it would just be the perfect, storyline here. Finally, A-Rob, but I don't know. I mean, it's all about Matt Stafford. Does he come back healthy? Can he get on the ball? Matt Stafford doesn't look good either. So, you would think, or look, you go on the other side and say, maybe they're going to lock up A-Rob now. There's no Cooper Kupp, and he's going to get locked up even worse, and he's not going to catch anything. So, we'll see. That's all we could say.
You're giving me the big NO relative to that.
I'm not feeling it.
Now, I understand that. All right, listen, give me a couple of jigsaw pieces here that you guys, either DFS or season long, guys that you like for this week. 4 teams on a bye. Some pretty good offenses too. Miami, Seattle on a bye. Who do you think comes out of nowhere?
Well, I don't give you the ordinary guys. So
you sure don't.
I like the Giants stack at Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton this week. 2 guys are to be low owned.
Yeah.
Detroit stinks.
I got
Giants, right? Detroit's,
Daniel
they stink every year.
Slayton. Boy, if you're right on this one, Tony.
It's unreal. And if you're playing DFS, I mean, you got a guy at only 5,000, which is super cheap at Darius Slayton. And Daniel Jones could be that million maker week if you grab him.
Is absolutely terrible.
I'm
right about that.
I like Nico Collins from Houston. Another good game at home. Nico's finally starting to ascend. He had 10 targets last week. Really nice game. He's only 4,100. And then let's go with the old Tyler Conklin, tight end from the Jets. Right. Last time he played New England, 8 catches, 10 targets, and a touchdown. So I'm kind of feeling that because they lock up their best guy all the time. New England does. And that's going to be Garrett Wilson. So Tyler Conklin's going to get some play.
I always laugh about that. The Jets now playing New England. They've lost to them 13 straight times. How long can that streak go on? It's you know what I mean? That's incredible. And the Jets much better this year.
Yeah.
Interesting to see, though. Interesting to see how they do against New England. That game's in New England. That's not an easy one for the Jets at all.
Never.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate that, Tony, and thank you very much for hanging out with me.
Always.
We'll be back next week. I hope I'll grab you next week so I can yell at you some more for 10 or so minutes. Everybody check Tony out. Give me a couple Twitter handles you got there, Tony, and where people can find you on Sirius.
You got me at Judge Jigsaw and at T Cutillo 23, and be on Sirius again hosting this weekend 5 to 8 on Saturday Sirius 87 XM.
Oh, man, good for you. Good for you, pal. Look at you.
I try to catch up to you, Pat.
Make sure you remind everybody where you got your start now when all of a sudden, you hit the big time, right?
Yeah, this week in pro football. Absolutely. No doubt.
That's right. All right, Tony. Thanks a lot, pal. Thanks for joining.
All right, Pat. Thanks, buddy.
All right. The great Tony Cutillo joining me there. King of all media. And talk about the king of all media. This guy is next. This guy is, in fact, the king of all gaming media out there, Los Angeles, diehard Ram fan. He'll be joining me next to talk about his lengthy diatribe, I'm sure, on John Wolford, the backup quarterback of the Rams. I'll talk about Sean Green from Bet SGPN. He'll be joining me. We'll talk some props, and we'll talk some picks, and we'll talk some Eagles next on This Week in Pro Football.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
UGI UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com. Where do you tailgate when your team's away? Join Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill for their first ever Birds Tailgate Party on Sunday, September 25th, starting at noon under the tent. Enjoy a full tailgate buffet from only $26.95 per person, along with specials at the bar. Celebrate with friends cheering on our hometown team. Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill Athletic Club. Visit juddsdining.com for more details.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Hi, welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you here on JAKIB Sports. Give me a follow at TWIPF Pat and at JAKIB Sports. Before we bring, we can bring Sean on, Xander. Why don't we do that? The great Sean Green from Bet SGPN, the Sports Gambling Podcast. Sean, how you doing, pal?
Doing great, man. Can't complain.
All right, good. Leave that to me. I'll complain enough of both of you.
Maybe we could talk about the officials Monday night.
You and I were talking about it at the same time, I know, on Twitter Monday night. Go ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds to tell me what a big fan of the officiating you were in that game.
I was a massive fan. They did an incredible job. You can't go 0-3 on personal fouls, right? They missed the face mask. They called the late hit when he was still in bounds. And then that Brandon Graham, that was a flop. This isn't the NBA. Come on. He tried to pull up. That's insane.
That's exactly how I see it. And I think an official's got to take that into account. Don't tell me about the letter of the law. Yes, it was a dumb play by Graham, but please don't decide a game with a minute to go. I think you just got to wave that off. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Here's a funny tweet. Sean from Les Bowen at Les Bowen, a longtime Philadelphia beat writer. Do you weigh more than 320 pounds? Have you ever played professional football? Specifically, have you been a defensive tackle? So if you do, if you answer these questions as yes, call 1-800-HOWIE for an exciting business opportunity. What are your thoughts on the Eagles immediately bulking up on the defensive line with some signings, including Ndamukong Suh?
Yeah, I mean, I think they obviously need some help. It really was that other defensive tackle they also lost that they put on IR besides Jonathan Davis. So they were just incredibly thin, I guess pun intended there. And they decided to bulk up, get a couple big boys in there, Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, just anyone to slow down that run. Although I would also say this, like they came against the Commanders, they were holding them to 3.1 yards per carry.
I saw that. You're right.
The real issue was they couldn't get off on third downs.
I know.
Terry McLaurin got the best of Darius Slay, and the offense wasn't out there that long. Yeah. So I think the run game wasn't great, but I think it's a little overblown how bad it was actually.
Yeah. Well, I'd say this. I give Howie some credit. He did not sit around and do nothing. He has attacked it, but it'll be very interesting, Sean, to see. That's going to be when Davis comes back. That's going to be a crowded interior. And you're going to get some guys going to be disgruntled about some playing time. We'll see how that plays out. All right, Sean. First, give me your thoughts. The Eagles-Colts game this Sunday. What is the impact of the absence of Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to hurt because, again, he had great chemistry with Jalen Hurts. They do have a bunch of other tight ends. Grant Calcaterra, maybe Tyree Jackson gets in there, a little Jack Stoll. I don't think you can really replace Dallas Goedert. Although I would say, some of the issues with the Eagles offense is there's a lot of mouths to feed. So now it gets a little bit easier. It's going to mean more targets for A.J. Brown, more targets for Devonta Smith. I even think Zach Pascal gets involved a little bit. I think some of those bubble screens that Goddard ran, I think I would be surprised if Pascal runs those. So I think they're going to be able to pivot. But yeah, losing Goddard definitely hurts.
All right. But I still like Philadelphia here, Sean. I think that I was talking with Tim McManus earlier about the fact the Eagles might have been a little chasing. Not that a loss is ever a good thing, but it certainly got the Eagles more firmly planted on the ground. It might be an angrier team that Indianapolis is facing Sunday.
Yeah, a little chip on their shoulder. I mean, Lane Johnson even said, hey, it's hard not to read your press clippings and hear how great you are. He admitted that maybe it was getting to their heads a little bit. Yeah. This is a great wake-up call. And actually, the Eagles laying 6.5 is one of my picks here. Normally, I don't come on here and take the Eagles, but love this team coming off a loss. And I think they're going to be super hungry. Nick Sirianni returning to Indianapolis. And it's a massive, massive letdown spot for the Colts, who, again, no one thought they could win the game. Everyone said what a joke that team was.
Yeah.
And now the next week happens, right? They get a reality check of Jeff Saturday not being able to coach completely off adrenaline and emotion and actually have to game plan. And they're going up against Matt Ryan, a guy who, before he got benched, was a turnover machine, which plays right into the hands of the Eagles.
All right. Talking with Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast, Bet SGPN, sponsored by the great folks at UGI. Sean, let me run one other game by you before I get a couple more picks off you. And that is the Minnesota Vikings go into Buffalo, and in one of the great heavyweight bouts of the season, they stand toe-to-toe with the Bills and win the game. And their reward from America's gaming experts is to be a 1.5-point underdog the following Sunday at home against Dallas. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's just insane. And it just shows you that these numbers come from like power rankings and that kind of stuff. And they're really trying to show that they think the Vikings are a fraudulent team. I mean, you look at their point differential, any sort of advanced metric you can point to shows that Minnesota shouldn't be winning all these games. I mean, I had never seen anything like that, but some teams just have the horseshoe. I'm not taking Dallas on the road here as a road favorite. Minnesota is a tough out at home, and I think they match up pretty well against the Cowboys. So I think it's a gift line here. I guess I'm concerned that Dallas bounces back after their loss in Lambeau, but it's a back-to-back road spot for the Cowboys, which is always tough. And who's going against this Vikings team right now?
I know. Now, Minnesota has a point differential of 35. Their only loss of the year was by 10 to Philadelphia. So that means they've won 8 games by 45 points, which is less than 6 per game. So they're not blowing anybody out, but I don't know if that's required, Sean. So it's hard not to like Minnesota here, but you get very jaundiced looking at that line saying somebody knows something.
Something else is going on.
Yeah, but that's interesting. One other thing, Sean, just real quick, do this for me. You probably know the Bills game was moved to Detroit. When you're looking at a game as a prognosticator and you see just snow, not wind, we all know what wind does. When you see something like snow, what does that do to your calculations on picking a game?
Yeah, it's interesting. In some ways, I think snow can actually help the over if your total's better because you see a lot of like busted, broken plays. What'll happen is everyone will see it snowing. Everyone will take the under. They'll move the line down. But really, a lot of times, if you're the receiver, if you're the running back, if you know where you're going, you have a huge advantage over the defense who it's tough for them to set their feet and tackle you. So I think this hurts the Bills because – again, being at home, dealing with that weather, it's a huge advantage.
I know, but 3 to 6 feet. We're not talking about 3 to 6 inches here.
No,
I mean 3 to 6 feet of snow. Yeah, that could be a factor. So that's unbelievable. But anyway, the game has been moved to Detroit. Be interesting to see, Sean, how many people show up.
I think in previous years, what they've done is they usually give out tickets for free. So I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of crazy Bills fans taking a road trip. I don't know how you can get a plane out if you're getting that much snow.
I don't know.
Taking a road trip to Detroit and filling it up
now.
And the Bills have kind of turned into a little bit of a public team because you got the fun fan base. You got everyone has Josh Allen on their fantasy team. So I think they might get I don't know what the attendance would be. I think they'll probably get at least 20,000 though.
A lot of cracks showing up in that Buffalo team. And that's something how, well, I thought they were invulnerable. I'll admit, I thought they were invulnerable this season, but boy, they have all of a sudden, they've hit a little bit of a skid there at 6-3. They're in third place in the AFC East, which is really kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, we threw out that I think it was right before that Jets game to take the Jets at 30-1 to win the AFC East because, again, they had a game coming up against the Bills. They were hanging around. They play good defense. And so at 30-1, it felt like a fun kind of long shot there. And then, of course, they go on to beat the Bills. That shortens their price up. And then, obviously, we saw the Bills lose again to the Vikings. So that long shot is looking way better right now in a super competitive AFC East.
It is. All right, give me a couple more picks, Sean, besides Philadelphia. Tell me somebody else you're like. I'm betting anything. One of the ones you like is New England over the Jets. So am I right?
Yes, New England over the Jets -3. I know I just made a case for why the Jets were a scrappy team, but Belichick just dominates this team. 34-6, the Patriots are against the Jets.
And you think that's a trend?
Yes. I think that's a strong trend. I'm a little worried about Mac Jones against this Jets defense. Like I said, the Jets defense is good.
Yeah.
I just you give Bill Belichick 2 weeks to prepare for Zach Wilson. I like my chances. So I'm taking the Pats there. I also actually, I really like Steelers +4 as a home dog against the Bengals. Now, betting the Bengals, it seems like there's a pretty easy formula. Do you have a pass rush? Yes, then you bet against the Bengals. If you don't have a pass rush, you can bet on the Bengals because they're going to light them up. But we saw it with TJ Watt. He's back. He's healthy. He's ready to wreck games himself. And these AFC North division games end up being pretty close. Wouldn't be shocked if they won outright, but I think +4 is a pretty good number. And this is a very random stat. I don't know what to make of it, but it's a pretty fun angle. Teams who played the Panthers are 0-8 straight up their next week. So, of course, the Bengals are coming off a bye, but before that, they did play the Panthers. So, I don't know if that factors in. I can't make sense of that trend, but I just think TJ Watt versus a very banged up Cincinnati team is a good spot for them. And we saw the Steelers offense come to life a little bit last week against the Saints.
Yeah. And I will go my third pick. I like the 2 picks. The third one I like is the Chefs at the LA Chargers. I thought the Chargers were actually going to win the division. That's not going to happen. I understand that they might get Keenan Allen back and Mike Williams. I don't know. But I'll take Andy Reid 5.5 over Brandon Staley any day of the week. I think the Chiefs are going to win by a touchdown at least. In your backyard, I know you'll be at the game. A big Ram and Charger fan that you are, you'll be there.
Just love LA football. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the Chargers, they're just not great at home. Again, no home field advantage. They're better on the road. To your point, maybe having Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back helps them a little bit. But and the Chargers, their rush defense is just so bad.
I know.
I think it could be a nice game for some of the Chiefs running backs.
Yeah, I think so. Whoever the running backs are this week, and watch Andy Reid resurrect the career of Kadarius Toney too.
Oh man,
he's got.
Mecole Hardman is out now, so
I know.
Kadarius Toney, put him in your fantasy lineup.
Get him in your fantasy lineup. Yeah. All right, Sean Green, tell me a couple of podcasts that you're working on, and people can find you on this excellent website, the Sports Gambling Podcast and Bet SGPN. What else you working on?
Yeah, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. We just added a new podcast, the World Cup Gambling Podcast.
Oh my
so
God.
Put that into Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
You are busy man.
Got a couple guys over in England working for us, breaking down the World Cup. Get some real soccer experts in there. So, and we're running a World Cup contest as well. If you download the SGPN app, completely free to enter. You can win a couple $100 cash and a merch store gift card. So, lot happening over there. Sports Gambling Podcast. Just Google it. You can't miss us.
No, you can't miss it. I don't want anybody to miss it. Sean, thanks very much for joining me this week. I look forward to talking to you next week. Have a good Thanksgiving. All right.
You too. Take it easy, Pat.
All right. Great Sean Green joining me there. All right, let's keep rumbling on here. I got one more to do, and that's the great Gary Myers, a prolific NFL author and a longtime columnist for the New York Daily News and the Dallas Morning News. Gary will be joining me. We're going to talk some NFL officiating next on This Week in Pro Football.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
For the team at Cordasco Financial Network, a part of Mercer Advisors, financial planning is about more than just managing your money. They guide you in making retirement, tax, insurance, and estate planning decisions by creating a plan based entirely on your individual needs. Plus, Cordasco Financial Network professionals work one-on-one with business owners in creating and managing company 401k plans, IRAs, and defined benefit plans. They can help you maximize plan efficiency, ensure full regulatory compliance, and optimize tax obligations. Call 855-558-3500 or click the link in the description below to learn more. Let their team help you secure your future. 855-558-3500. Cordasco Financial Network is a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Andrew Garrett Incorporated, which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors. Client experiences vary. Successful outcomes not guaranteed.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan here on JAKIB Sports. We close in on week number 11 in the National Football League. Tennessee visiting Green Bay tonight. Tennessee's always a tough out. They're just a big, tough, ugly uniformed team that plays you tough all the time with that refrigerator on legs in the backfield. Derrick Henry. The Titans are always tough. It's going to be a tough game for Green Bay, who I don't think cured all their ills just by beating Dallas. Great win for the Packers, but I think they still have a little bit of a ways to go. A word, too, about the Eagles' upcoming schedule. You know, we all thought in looking at the Eagles' schedule how easy it was. They were playing the AFC South and they were playing the NFC South. So, you know, they not terribly tough games for Philadelphia. But lo and behold, you look at it. Green Bay, after the Indianapolis game, the Eagles are home to Green Bay and Tennessee. Now, if the Packers go ahead and take care of business tonight against the Titans, or at least put up a tough game, now you got those two teams coming in back-to-back weeks to Philadelphia. Not the easiest part of the schedule. And then after that, the Eagles are on the road for 3 straight. At the Giants, which I thought back in August was not going to be a tough game. At Chicago, which 6 weeks into this season was a walkover. And then at Dallas. So all of a sudden, things have toughened up in the Eagles' schedule. And it just goes to show you how mercurial everything is in the NFL. And speaking of mercurial, let's bring this guy on here, the longtime columnist for the New York Daily News, the Dallas Morning News, and, of course, the author of Brady versus Manning, The Catch, and assorted other. And how about them Cowboys, a big favorite here in Philadelphia, and that's Gary Myers. Gary, how you doing?
Pat, I'm sorry, a minute late. I got caught up in the middle of
Roger Goodell on the phone again?
No, not this time, but
okay.
Yeah, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, pal. Thank you very much. It's great to have you on, Gary. And listen, let me give you a little bit of a soapbox here to get started. Obviously, a great deal of talk in Philadelphia after that Monday night game and some, I think, egregious officiating calls. I posited in the first segment of this show that let's cut this out. Let's cut out a scenario where the refs are under the hood looking to see whether a guy was touched down and they overlook and ignore an egregious face mask. I say give the coaches 3 challenges each. They can challenge anything they want, a sideline play, a possession play, or a called penalty, non-called penalty. Just shorten up the time you look at them. Give me your thoughts on that, or what you would recommend in terms of fixing replay.
Well, first of all, what happened on Monday night with the face mask / fumble is what the NFL would call an unintended consequence, where you're reviewing one thing and something else shows up. Right. Now, I watched that play, as many times as they showed the replay, and then I watched it a lot on my own. I wanted to see the positioning of the back judge. And what I don't understand on that one, Pat, is he seemed to be looking directly at the play with Goddard's face mask facing him, and how he missed the defender yanking on it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it's such a bad look for the NFL to have the mechanism to review that play, but then when you have 2 things that really should be reviewed, the fumble and the face mask, you're saying the face mask, which would have negated the fumble, we can't do anything about.
Right.
But he did fumble it, and Washington recovered. Right. I guess, but here's the problem is, if you remember a couple years ago, they incorporated pass interference into review.
A replay, right.
That Saints-Rams playoff game.
Right.
And it was a disaster.
Right.
And so they decided, judgment calls
are off the books.
Are not,
right.
Are not going to be covered by replay.
Right.
But something that is so obvious.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of pass interference calls, you look at it from different angles and, okay, maybe he interfered, maybe offensive interference. But when somebody has hold of the face mask and pulls on it, that shouldn't be a judgment call.
Right.
It's a referee's blew the call. Right. It wasn't their judgment. Right. It wasn't a face mask. They just didn't see it for whatever reason. So when you're showing 15 million people, however many watch that game on television, that replay from every angle, and you can't do anything about it.
I know.
And I hope we're going to discuss also it was Brandon Graham, I believe, right?
Brandon Graham is right.
I mean, he was sliding on his knees to try not to hit the guy. These guys are, 250 to 300 pounds. I mean, Graham's not that big, but I mean, what do they want him to do? Make themselves invisible, make themselves skinny?
Yeah.
I mean, some of these collisions are just not avoidable. And the way Heineke went down, he made himself vulnerable because he was kind of sitting up, if I remember correctly.
I remember he was on his knees and he was waiting for Graham to hit him. He admitted that after the game.
Absolutely. And that to me is just not in the spirit of the rule of protecting the quarterback.
I agree. And I think you hit on it right there, Gary, which is the spirit of the rule. I think we've lost that in the NFL. Now everything, it's clinically, if you look crossly at a quarterback, you're in danger of drawing a flag. We've seen numerous instances this year, as you mentioned, on national TV where they have clearly blown calls relative to roughing the passer. So what does the league do about this? I mean, obviously they've got to protect these quarterbacks. They are their primary guys. I know that, but what are they going to do here? They're affecting the outcome of games by leaning too far the other way.
Well, two things I want to say about that. One is, in the 4 years since I've left the Daily News, I'm watching more games on television than I have since I'm 15 years old, right? And I find these games, the first thing I do when the play's over is look at the bottom of the screen to see if that yellow flag is
fair enough.
Each network does it a little bit differently.
Right.
So that has made the game, far less enjoyable.
Fair enough. I agree with you.
And I just think that by having all these rules that I think half the time the officials, don't know what to call. So they're calling everything.
Right.
Right. I just think it's just taken away from the product and in many ways affected the integrity of the game, which the NFL is just so concerned about.
Right. I agree. And I agree about the integrity of the game. And the look from Monday night is a terrible look. That didn't happen in a Sunday afternoon game in the 1 o'clock slot between Jacksonville and Indianapolis. That happened on Monday night. So I agree with you about that. All right, Gary, let's segue a little bit here, talking with Gary Myers.
Hey, Pat, I just had one other thought I wanted to throw in. In the Buffalo, Minnesota game, there was a sideline pass to Gabe Davis in the last 2 minutes.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it's an excellent example. You're right.
That the officials upstairs didn't say, wait a minute, we got to take a look at it, when clearly he didn't have possession of the ball. Right. And because there's no challenges in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's inexplicable. Why didn't they look at that play? It's incredible, Gary. I don't understand it. It's seemingly so random as to when those outliers appear that no coach can rely on it. And they
don't give the coaches the challenges in the last 2 minutes because they think they're going to abuse it just to get an extra timeout by challenging a play that really shouldn't be challenged. So I don't know what the answer is to it.
I don't
know. The other point I was going to make, I had forgotten, this is what I wanted to say, is right now everybody's worked up about it, right? And I'm sure in Philadelphia, that's all they've been talking about it all week.
Yeah.
But the problem is that once the season is over, and then the competition committee meets several times, they meet with at the combine, then they go to Florida or wherever the league meeting might be, and they meet there, and emotions have died down, and they look at the tapes and they say, well, this play only came up once or twice all season. And, again, with the unintended consequences, look, we're opening a Pandora's box if we change the rule and so by the time they get ready to vote on any rule changes, the only team still ticked off will be the Eagles.
Right.
Because it likely cost them the game.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen just so many times over the years that by the time they get around to voting on it, everybody is, everybody's cooled down.
Yeah. Excellent point. Well, we'll see. But I just think the national TV, the very, very public aspect of some of these misses this weekend, we'll see if it has a more lingering effect.
Yeah.
Listen, I wanted to ask you about, but you already brought up that Minnesota-Buffalo game, and we've been talking about the Philadelphia game. Well, that's my segue then. Many had more or less written the season off that it was going to be Buffalo-Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. Both teams appear to have sprung a leak, perhaps much more pronounced in Buffalo. Give me your thoughts on these two teams. The Eagles' run defense suddenly is very suspect. Buffalo, third place in the AFC East.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo, their problems to a large extent have been Josh Allen the last, say, 10 quarters. I think he's got a half a dozen interceptions and that fumbled snap at the end of regulation that led to Minnesota getting the touchdown. The thing we have to remember is we're just halfway through the season. And I thought like 15 years ago, there was a shift in people lost their long-term perspective. And this became such a week-to-week league that we want to make long-term judgments based on short-term results, so that we're taking the temperature of every team every Monday morning, and it's really just based on how they did the day before.
24 hours previous, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, the Eagles have been the best team in the league for the first 8 weeks, and then they lose one game, and now, the roof is falling. The sky is falling, rather, not the roof.
Right. That's fair.
Buffalo's got another 8 games to go, and they'll probably get their stuff together and make a good run for the Super Bowl. But now, they lost 2 in a row, and Josh Allen has made mistakes, and he's got an elbow injury. We don't know how severe it is. So my advice, and I used to say this to my sports editors all the time, because if the Jets or Giants had lost on a Monday morning, the sports editor used to say to me, and I still ringing in my ears, "Season on the brink." You got to write it's over. And I'm going, come on, we're only in the 5th week of the season. Give it a break.
Yeah, but let me point out this to you, Gary. Weeks ago, I told you that the Buffalo Bills shoot too many field goals, and they keep doing it, and they keep losing by 1 or 2 because they give away 3 safe points, and Allen ends up throwing picks in the end zone. Buffalo's got to get a little more realistic when it comes to 4th and 3, but that's just one thing. Now,
I'm not sold on Sean McDermott as a good game day coach.
Game day, exactly. Now,
I mean, kicking off into the end zone against Kansas City last year.
Yeah, right.
Everybody knew they should have dribbled the ball to take some more time off the clock. I mean, how can anybody who wants the Bills to win have confidence in Sean McDermott's decision-making in the final 2 minutes of any game?
Very fair. That's right. Gary, the Bills' opponent in that game Sunday, Minnesota, is now a gaudy 8-1. And I pointed out earlier on the show with Sean Green in my gaming segment that their reward for going up to Buffalo and winning and now returning home is to be a 1.5-point underdog at home against Dallas. Just give me your thoughts on the Vikings. And do you think that there's just a nationwide reluctance to buy into Kirk Cousins?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not like Kirk Cousins just got in the league and we're not sure about him. This is his 11th season. And what does he have? 1 playoff victory, maybe?
I think it was a game against New Orleans.
Yeah, against the Saints. I was trying to think if there was another one. I'm not sold on Kirk Cousins. I mean, he has played better this year. There's no question about it. And maybe it's because of the coaching. But I don't know if I trust him in a big spot yet, not to throw a crucial interception. Now, he could prove everybody wrong by the second weekend in February if he's sitting there, standing there holding the trophy. But he's one of those guys that he's got to get to a championship game at some point in order to get rid of this label of just being a quarterback who maybe can, is a decent regular season quarterback. Certainly is a good businessman, making over $30 million the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But I'm not sold on him. Now, I'm willing to be convinced, but he's got to do it.
Yeah. I agree. And obviously you're not alone. You're not alone in that assessment at all. All right, Gary, last one. I went off on a rant earlier in the show. I know. It's hard to believe my Fred Rogers type exterior that on the Jeff Saturday hiring and Bill Cowher's reaction. Let me get as a guy who has talked to and interviewed probably a couple hundred NFL coaches. Just give me your thoughts on the hiring of Saturday. You and I talked about it last week. Lo and behold, they win the game. But I was very annoyed with Bill Cowher's remarks. Give me your thoughts on whether does an NFL coach have to pay his dues in order to succeed?
I think a lot of that has to do with the people he has around him, because I think the best NFL head coaches are more CEOs than necessarily calling the offense or defensive plays. And I'll just use, one of my all-time favorite coaches in Bill Parcells.
Right.
Let his offensive coordinator, call the offense, Belichick calling the defense, or whoever he had as his coordinator after Belichick. And he managed the game. Now, but the issue is we don't know anything about Jeff Saturday's ability to manage the game. Right. Now you'd say, well, how hard is it? How many tough decisions are there in a game? Well, there's enough.
Right.
Enough that has separated coaches through the course of history of being great game day coaches or not.
Yeah.
The part I agree somewhat, I don't remember everything that Cowher said, but just, as an overview of this, if I'm an assistant coach who's aspiring to be a head coach, and I've put in my dues for 10 years, and I'm on the Indianapolis Colts staff, and Jim Irsay knows I really want to be a head coach.
Right.
And then he goes and brings in one of his all-time favorite players who has never done more than coach above the high school level. And I think it was a private school, maybe his kid's school in Georgia.
Right.
I do think that's insulting to all these coaches that have paid their dues. That's not to say that you have had to pay your dues in order to be a good NFL head coach, but certainly that has been the profile forever, that you just don't walk in and become an NFL head coach with zero experience and you're successful.
Okay.
The Colts last week beat a incredibly dysfunctional Raiders team.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Biggest disappointment in the league by far to me are the Raiders.
Right.
They were a playoff team last year.
I know.
And they're 2-7 now. So I'm willing certainly to take a wait and see attitude on Jeff Saturday and see what he's got.
I think, though, Gary, I'll say this just to wrap it up. I think the whole mythology of NFL coaching sometimes, I think, it becomes so weighty. This whole thought that John Gruden made famous, to get there at 4:00 in the morning or Dick Vermeil, don't leave until, or have a cot in your office. I know this. Vince Lombardi went to 7 a.m. mass every morning as the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. He was 9-1 in the postseason and won 5 or 6 titles. I don't think it's not brain surgery, but I wish Jeff Saturday well. I hope he does well, because I think Jim Irsay can hire whoever he wants. It's his team, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's a subject I'd like to, NFL coaching. I'd love to explore and spend more time with you on. Maybe we could do that in a future show.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Because one of the books I wrote was called Coaching Confidential, where I took a behind the scenes look at like 10 different coaches and how they drive themselves out of their own minds. And one of the chapters was on your old friend in Philadelphia, Andy Reid. Right. And, he showed me in his office, where he didn't have it there that day, but where he has his pull out. I don't know if it was like a Murphy bed or something like that, where he would just sleep in his office.
That's got to be some Murphy bed for Andy Reid now.
Jeez, there are a lot. Tony Dungy, tried to pick his kids up from school, or at least drive them to school in the morning. Yeah, and he was pretty successful.
Yeah, I think it's a mythology, but something I'd love to explore with you.
Yeah, that's a great subject.
I've taken you too long as it is, Gary. I appreciate you taking all this time. Thank you very much. Always great having you on, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. All right.
That's great, Pat. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Great Gary Myers joining me. Xander, if you get just a second, if you could bring up the week, if you got it, the week 11 schedule, and then we'll wrap this up. There's some decent games this week. It's funny in the NFL, each week it's tough to see. Here we go, week 11. I think the big games this week, good game tonight, like I said. But if you look at it, Dallas, Minnesota is a good game. I think the Chiefs and Chargers should be a good game. We'll see if the Steelers can give the Bengals a rough time, but not a great schedule, certainly, I think. See how that plays out. But a lot of the other games pretty nondescript, but all eyes here in Philadelphia would be on whether the Eagles are going to bounce back against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. Look forward to that, and we will we'll all take a look at that, and we'll see you next week. Next week being Thanksgiving. Please keep an eye out here. Tough to do a Thursday show at 6 o'clock on Thanksgiving night. So please check my Twitter at TWIPFPat. Check the network at JAKIB Sports, and we'll tell you exactly when week 12 of This Week in Pro Football is going to come on. Thank you very much for joining me this week, and we'll talk to you next week on This Week in Pro Football.